regional commanders of the armed forces of Venezuela reject the call for a coup d'etat and military intervention by the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump announced the cancellation of trade relations with Canada after accusing the country's authorities of manipulating a speech by former President Ronald Reagan. And in Argentina, the authorities have imposed an election ban on the eve of the legislative process. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. We now begin with the information. The regional commanders of the armed forces of Venezuela reject the call for a coup d'etat and military intervention by the United States. The National Bolivarian Armed Forces condemned the recent statements made by the fugitive right-wing extremist Leopoldo López, who called for an invasion of the country. The Venezuelan military affirmed that promoting war and killing people is a despicable act that rejects one's own roots and people. The Strategic Defense Regions expressed their repudiation of these destabilizing right wing that aspires to take power by force with the promotion of an intervention by foreign powers. And Venezuela's Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino López, urged Washington to present evidence showing the responsibility of the people murdered by the U.S. military in the Pacific.
The United States of America wants to do it with bombs, with missiles, killing children, intimidating fishermen here in the Caribbean, extrajudicially murdering people in the Caribbean while they are working. Where is the evidence against these people who have been attacked? There are more than 30 people who have been announced by the spokespersons of the United States itself, who have died in the Caribbean Sea and in the Pacific, as a result of missiles launched from drones, from boats, from ships deployed in the Caribbean Sea. That's nothing but warmongering.
And in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro thanked Colombia for its support in addressing U.S. imperialist aggressions against the country and the region. The president emphasized that while the U.S. military threat looms over the Caribbean, the country is well prepared to defend its territorial integrity, freedom, and peace. President Maduro also highlighted the support that Venezuela has from all its brother countries, especially Colombia, which has neutralized the violent acts that have been attempted against Venezuela, and insisted that imperialist and psychological warfare threats have been successfully countered with serenity and tranquility.
3 de mayo 2020.
On May 3, 2020, a group of mercenaries, Venezuelan mercenaries, and some U.S. mercenaries left from Colombia, supported by Duque. Now the whole truth has come out because the organizer, John Woodrock, has confessed everything they did, who financed it, who prepared it, who led it, how did he order it, where did they train them, and he has said everything about even Duque, then President of Colombia. We also said it because we knew everything even Duque was doing, thanks to the fact that there are many patriots in the military forces and in the intelligence forces of Colombia. And from here I thank you for all the support you have given us for many years, to all those who have supported the military and intelligence forces of Colombia, who have their hearts in Bolivar, and love us as the common homeland of Bolivar.
Y las fuerzas de inteligencia de Colombia que tienen el corazón en Bolívar y nos aman como patria común de Bolívar.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced the cancellation of trade relations with Canada after accusing the country's authorities of manipulating a speech by former President Ronald Reagan. On his social media, Truth Social, Trump called a Canadian television advertisement false, claiming that it misquotes former President Reagan talking about tariff policies. The U.S. president accused the announcement issued by the province of Ontario of attempting to interfere with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to raise tariffs on Canada. In the scenario, Trump announced that he would end all trade negotiations with Canada with immediate effect. And precisely in this regard, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed his government's willingness to resume trade partnership with the U.S. to the benefit of workers in both countries.
We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries.
Moving on to other topics, Tropical Storm Melissa leaves at least 3 dead and a dozen injured in Haiti during landslide in Fontamara, south of Port-au-Prince. Meteorological authorities issued an orange alert in the southeastern departments of the country. The civil protection authorities warned of heavy rains and the risk of flooding in the coming hours in several departments of the island region. They also reported that the St. Martin River overflowed, destroying the St. Suzanne Bridge in the west of the country, while several homes were affected in Port-de-Paix in the northeast. And the Mexican government reported that an oil spill in the state of Veracruz caused by heavy rains that hit the east of the country, where there were at least 78 people dead and 23 people still missing, was brought under control. The Secretary of the Navy issued a statement informing that the spill has been contained, which occurred in a pipeline belonging to the state-owned company Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex. It is specified that containment barriers were placed to prevent the liquid from spreading into the Pantepec River with the support of local fishermen and the military. The agency reported that the pipeline is operating safely and that environmental cleanup work is continuing in the affected area. And in Syria, authorities have reported several forest fires in the towns of Al-Mutras and Basarsar in the municipality of Safida. The fire department reported that several firefighting teams were dispatched, including helicopters, to support the efforts to contain the flames. Civil Defense stated that despite the progress made in some areas, the flames continue to be fueled by strong winds and dry vegetation, which is why they urged residents in the affected areas to evacuate and follow instructions to avoid injuries or fatalities. Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. We continue with more information. In Argentina, the authorities have imposed an election ban on the eve of the legislative proceedings. The National Electoral Chamber has announced restrictions on campaign advertising, events and sport activities in order to guarantee the transparency of the electoral process and protect the will of the voters. The ban was put in place on Friday at 8 a.m. local time, as specified by the designated authority, and will remain in effect until the conclusion of the elections on Sunday, October 26th. Argentina will renew a total of 127 deputies and 24 national senators. Meanwhile, also in Argentina, the Fuerza Patria coalition denounced the negative impact of President Javier Milei's policies on the stability of the population during the closing of its electoral campaign. The governor of Buenos Aires, Axel Kicillof, appeared in a photo of unity to support his supporting the leading candidate Jorge Tayana. The main objective is to replicate the result in the integration of future provincial legislative chambers, where with 19 votes of their own, they will be able to represent the province in the National Congress. This occurred in the context of the provincial legislative elections to be held next Sunday, October 26th. The Electoral Service of Chile begins preparations for the November 16th presidential and parliamentary elections. 15,070,000 voters are called to the polls as part of these preparations for the election process. The CERVEL, the institute, will publish on its website the list of the 203,646 poll workers this weekend. This method of publishing the names of the designated poll workers differs from that used in previous elections, where they were notified by registered letter or in the print media. CERVEL reported that a total of 3,498 polling stations will be open, of which 3,379 will be in the country and 119 abroad. On November 16th, Chileans will not only elect their next president, but also the 155 members of the Chamber of Deputies and 23 of the 50 senators. Meanwhile, also in Chile, high school students protested against interventionism promoted by far-right politicians regarding freedom of expression in the educational community, in addition to attempting to censor national historical facts for their own convenience. Students marched to the Superintendency of Education to reject and express their concern about the censorship that these right-wing sectors are trying to impose on educational content. They demanded an end to political repression against students and teachers through legal proceedings and summaries against them, suspension and loss of classes. The students denounced the action of a counselor who attempted to censor historical education about the coup d'etat in Chile against President Salvador Allende, describing it as alleged indoctrination.
Statement by a Republican councilwoman from the Municipal Council, in which she claimed that our school and our principal were receiving threats from teachers and that they were ultra-left indoctrination, and our school had been targeted for an activity to commemorating the coup d'etat. A fact that was the coup d'etat and that led to a dictatorship in our country, and that is a reality. So it is not possible that the people who are supposed to be educating us, teaching us and training us are also denying things that actually happened in our country.
And after overcoming a legal challenge from the far right, Brazil's first medical school course for agrarian reform settlement residents is underway. Our correspondent Brian Mir has more.
In 1997, Brazil's social movements pressured the federal government to create university courses for youth in agrarian reform settlements and quilombolas, which are villages of descendants of people who escaped slavery. Since then, 190,000 people have gotten bachelor's degrees through the Pronera program. Now it's starting its first medical school course at Pernambuco Federal University.
We believe that Brazil's public universities, especially the Federal University of Pernambuco, need to address the structural problems in our society. When we look at rural areas, we understand that there are populations which still face barriers in accessing both university education and quality health care.
After 21 years, Pronera was cancelled by far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, but it was reinstated when Lula da Silva took office in 2023. When the government announced the new medical school program, however, a legal challenge was mounted to attempt to stop it from happening.
It's important to say that we never had any legal problems with our courses in areas like education and geography. But now this medical course bothers Brazil's elites.
Pedagogia, de geografia, agora quando o assunto é medicina, aí incomodou a elite brasileira. Então por isso que nós
This is why legal challenges are on the way, mainly from the right and the far right, who are attempting to cancel the medical school program.
The first legal hurdle was overcome this month when a federal regional court ruled in favor of Pronera. The plaintiffs still have a right to appeal to the Supreme Court, but the judges ordered that the program be allowed to start immediately.
The law and medical schools have always been occupied by the children of the rich in Brazil. This is why this bothers them. They don't want their children to study in the same spaces as the children of poor people.
Brazil's first medical program for agrarian reform settlement and quilombola residents is scheduled to start by the end of the month. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Caruaru, Pernambuco.
We have a second short break coming up now, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages and much more. Follow the page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In Lebanon, at least 2 people were killed and 2 were injured after an Israeli airstrike targeted a car in the southern city of Toul. The Lebanese Ministry of Health reported that Israeli occupation forces continue their attacks against the country, mainly in the southern region, which constitutes a clear violation of the ceasefire agreement that was reached on November 27th of 2024. A new wave of bombings has been reported since last Thursday, October 23rd. In this regard, Israel argued that the attacks are supposedly targeting infrastructure linked to the Islamic resistance movement Hezbollah. However, the impact is being felt in residential areas. And Russia's air defense forces shot down approximately 111 Ukrainian attack drones in the southwest of the country during the last day. Through the Telegram social network, the Russian Ministry of Defense stated that the operations were carried out in 13 regions of the country, including the capital Moscow and the Sea of Azov. For its part, Moscow Governor Andrei Vorovyov reported that the impact of a drone on a residential building caused 4 adults and 1 minor to be injured. In recent months, Ukraine has focused on its attacks on refineries, fuel depots, and other facilities of Russia's oil industry. And the Russian government rejected Lithuania's accusations of alleged violation of its airspace by Russian fighter jets. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that on October 23rd, Su-30 fighter jets conducted scheduled training flights over the Kaliningrad region in accordance with the rules for the use of airspace over the territory. The ministry specified that the aircraft did not deviate from their flight path or violate the borders of other states. In this scenario, the Russian government reported that the information on the flight's routes was confirmed through objective monitoring tools. Move on now to other topics. North Korean President Kim Jong-un reaffirmed military and friendly ties with Russia, assuring continued cooperation without hesitation. The leader confirmed the depth of bilateral relations during the initial ceremony for the construction of a museum dedicated to the participation of Korean military personnel in operations abroad. In his speech, Kim Jong-un paid tribute to his country's soldiers who participated in the liberation of the Russian province of Kursk alongside Russian military personnel. He also highlighted the event as the beginning of a new history of combat unity in the relations between the two nations, which were consolidated as the most reliable, firm, and invincible in sharing the same destiny. Japan's new Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae stated during her first speech that there will be an improvement in security and military strategy as tensions with China, North Korea, and Russia increase. According to Takaichi, her government will aim to accelerate annual military spending to 2% of gross domestic product by next March instead of 2027 as was previously planned. The official also assured that she will review the security strategy in advance to have it ready by the end of 2026, which will include significant updates. Takaichi took office as prime minister on Tuesday, ending months of political vacuum marked by power struggles within her party and consecutive electoral defeats. The fourth plenary session of the Communist Party of China, concluding in Beijing, where the guidelines for the 15th five-year plan for economic and social development were established. The 20th Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party approved the proposed five-year plan for economic and social development for the years 2026-2030, while the country continues to fulfill the main objectives and tasks of the previous plan. The 15th plan seeks to establish a solid foundation for achieving socialist modernization by the year 2035. In this regard, the party's political bureau reported that the new plan aims to continuously improve the quality of life of the Chinese people, as well as advance the self-sufficiency and strengthen scientific and technological capacity. And in other news, on Friday, at least 3.6 million Irish citizens were called to the polls to elect the new president. The Election Commission reported that voting began at 7 a.m. local time and ended at 10 p.m. when the polls close. Vote counting is expected to begin at 9 a.m. on Saturday, when the successor to Michael D. Higgins, who has been president since 2011, will be elected. The latest polls show that legislator Catherine Connolly, known for her strong stance against Israel, has a significant lead with approximately 40% of voter support ahead of 20% to 25% for her rival Heather Humphreys, who represents the center-right Fine Gael party. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.